Hello everybody. Here's another exciting video for you. I just wanted to show you how a TDA would look using Surviving Antarctica. If you remember way back in October, you guys filled out a similar TDA chart to the one that you just did for April morning, where the prompt was to look at the theme, working hard or working together helps you overcome your challenges. And all of you, using the red, the blue, and the green ink again, came up with 2 examples from each of the sections of Surviving Antarctica to prove this theme by Andrea White. And again, in the beginning of the story, you probably had some examples of how not working together didn't help them overcome their challenges. And then closer to the middle and end, you had more examples of how working together did help them overcome their challenges. And so I asked you to take a look at that chart that you completed back in October. You all did turn that into Shobi if you're searching for it. And I asked you to pick one example from the red, one from the blue, and one from the green, because we'll use those examples to prove the theme by Andrea White, that working together helps them overcome their challenges. Again, MLA format, keeping in mind that your name, your teacher's name, ELA, and then the due date. There is no due date. You're not writing this. I'm just showing you. And that you'd put a title. Notice everything is double spaced, no extra spaces anywhere, and notice that it's in Arial or Times New Roman 12 font. This is the intro paragraph. I do recommend paragraphing just because it keeps you more organized. You don't actually have to paragraph in a TDA, but I really do recommend it. So you want to start out with a really strong topic sentence that basically answers the prompt. You want to answer the prompt. How does Andrea White in Surviving Antarctica show evidence of the theme that working together helps people overcome challenges? So here I answered it. Working together to overcome a challenge. I underlined it. I wanted to put it in italics, but you guys are going to be writing your TDA by hand, and you can't really write in italics. So I underlined the theme, which I recommend you do when you're handwriting. So working together to overcome a challenge is a theme. I'm answering the prompt that is evident throughout the novel Surviving Antarctica by Andrea White. Definitely always say the name of the text that you're writing about. I underlined it because it's a novel. And then I need to explain the situation of how these kids did overcome their challenge. So I'm saying at the beginning of the novel, the 5 contestants struggle to work as a team. But as their journey presents them with difficult challenges, the kids, so I'm getting specific of how this theme relates to the novel, the kids soon learn that working together will help them overcome their challenges and survive the brutal trek to the South Pole. So I kind of gave the reader a little background here. I also answered how the theme is evident and related to the plot of this novel. If you look down here a little bit, I start with my first example of how working together does, or in the beginning in that case does not, help them overcome their challenges. Notice I use a transition at the beginning of their journey to the South Pole. The 5 contestants cannot get along, which negatively impacts their ability to get organized and begin to tackle the challenges. So I introduce the first example by saying, hey, these kids don't work together, so they don't overcome challenges in the beginning, which is a way of kind of backing into this theme. Now I give my example. Here's my evidence. For example, on the ship, Robert shouts at Andrew for not doing his job of separating the bottles. And I want to put a quote in. Notice it's not a super long, rambling quote, but it's a quote that really gives specific evidence that Robert and Andrew couldn't work together. Now, I didn't do something here which I should have done. What I needed to do was I needed to put the page number, and if I am correct, it was page 134. I'll have to double check that. And then the period would go after the parentheses. Now comes my analysis. I need to explain how that proves the theme that working together helps them overcome, or in this case doesn't, help them overcome challenges. Robert realizes that when one person in the group, Andrew, doesn't do his job, it makes it difficult for the group to overcome their challenges. Everyone has to do their part, basically. Then I would move into the next example that would support this theme, and this is probably going to be an example of how the kids do work hard together because they're starting to figure out that that's how they're going to overcome their challenges. So, again, I start with a transition word later in the journey, and then I would explain the situation of how the kids work together to overcome their challenges. I would give evidence. Paraphrasing is okay, especially if you have to avoid long rambling quotes, or a quote would be fine. Just remember to put the page number in parentheses. Remember, we only have one source. The source is Surviving Antarctica, and we already said up here what the source was, so that's why we don't have a works cited at the end, and that's why we don't need to put Surviving Antarctica in the parentheses. We only need to put the page number. Notice there's no P for page or period. You just put the actual page number. You would then move on to a third paragraph, starting off with a transition. You'd put your last example from the end of the story. You'd analyze how it shows that working together helps people overcome their challenges, and then you would conclude, and your conclusion would restate in a new way what you basically said in your intro. So hopefully that helps. You guys are going to move on to another story now called Powder, and you're going to practice pulling evidence and analysis from there. And then tomorrow we are going to write a TDA talking about the theme of April morning, which you've already done all the legwork for. You've found all the evidence and you've analyzed it already on your TDA charts, so it shouldn't be too tough.